Welcome. In this video, we are continuing our discussions of inchoate offenses, and we are going to look at the offense or the inchoate offense of abetment. You have not watched the video or seen a video that discusses the inchoate offense of conspiracy. Please make sure you watch that video before you proceed to this one, because in that one we explain basically what the inchoate offenses was, the rationale behind the inchoate offenses, and why conspiracy comes in. It is important that you also you get the conspiracy so that you can put the understanding together with abetment. So if you've not seen the conspiracy video, I urge you to make sure that you watch the conspiracy before we proceed on with this. Okay? All right, let's proceed. So here we are going to discuss the inchoate offense of abetment. Now, we have discussed, if you remember, that when we say an inchoate offense, the inchoate offense refers to any kind of offense that is part of the grand scheme of the particular or substantial offense or substantive offense. We've explained much of that. So what exactly do we mean by the offense or the inchoate offense of abetment? All right, without much ado, I will quickly switch on to the Criminal Offences Act, Act 29, and in the relevant section, we're going to discuss or see what the statute defines to be the offense of abetment. Then we'll now proceed on a discussion thereof. Let's see, in the Criminal Offences Act, Act 29. Section 20 of the Act mentions a person who directly or indirectly instigates, commands, counsels, procures, solicits, or in any other manner purposely aids, facilitates, encourages, or promotes, whether by a personal act or presence or otherwise, and a person who does an act for the purposes of aiding, facilitating, encouraging, or promoting the commission of a criminal offense by any other person, whether known or unknown, certain or uncertain, commits the criminal offense of abetting that criminal offense and of abetting the other person in respect of that criminal offense. You saw under the Section 20, subsection 1 of the Criminal Offences Act, Act 29, what we specifically mean by the offense of abetment. Now, if you look at it carefully, a couple of things are apparent in the definition. When we say an abetment, we are saying that there has to be a direct or an indirect support, either through a counsel, through an encouragement, through an instigation, for the purposes of aiding or supporting another person or promoting the commission of a criminal offense. Okay? These two, broadly, synonyms that are there explains what the concept of abetment is. So let's take it again. Instigates, counsels, procures, solicits, okay, for the purposes of facilitating, encouraging, and promoting the commission of a crime. It's abetment. The Act also adds that it could either be with the person's presence or without the person's presence, amongst a host of other factors. So basically, that is what we mean by an abetment. Let me give you an example, okay? Or I'll still go back to the analogy we used in our conspiracy discussion about the football team. That is an offensive to try and get a goal to be scored or put the ball into the opposing net, the opposing team's net. So let's say we are back onto the field. The ball is somewhere around the 18-yard. The ball is somewhere past the center line, right? That's what they call it. Yes. Okay. So one person kicks the ball, right? Lays a pass to one of the wingers. The wingers are those who are usually running with the ball along the sidelines. Now, this person, as he dashes down the sideline, you have another striker, okay, who is also probably heading down towards the goalpost. What usually happens, as we may see as football lovers, is that the person is going to lay a long cross or a pass from the sideline directed towards the attacker, so that the attacker can now hit his head against the ball and the ball will land itself into the net. Right? So you realize that in the particular scheme of things, there was a particular singular pass, right? And the purpose of the pass was to make sure that another person will hit his head against that and goes onto the net. So if you come onto the playing field of crime, okay, conspiracy is like the outward attempt the grand purpose, how the movement actually started, then abetment becomes part of the much more closer or proximal actions that culminated in the orchestration or the finality of the act. You get it? So probably the person who may have engineered the pass at the very beginning may not have been the one who actually gave the last pass. But you realize that this other person who was the winger who laid the pass was the one that allowed, the attacker to hit his head against the ball, and the ball entered into the net. So on the field of crime, we call that particular action an abetment. You understand that? The person abets the crime. So we are saying abetment is what you are doing, either by your presence or not, either directly or indirectly, either by your counsel or at your instance, your instigation, the action happened. If you do that, or if a person is caught in that particular situation, we say that he's guilty of what? An abetment of the crime. Are you okay? So that is what we mean by an abetment. So watch the synonyms. It's very important. An instigation, a command, a counsel. All right? So if, for example, someone gives another person some money, look, this guy, I want you to finish him. All right? Let's take the case of, I want you to finish him. So finish him. He pulls out some money and gives it to him. Make sure that, you do justice to him. Okay, so he goes on and decides to, this henchman, okay, who has been contracted to go and finish somebody. He takes the money and he goes, does the job, actually, of finishing the person. Now, if he is eventually arrested by the police following thorough investigation and he's charged with murder, the person who did the instigation by giving him the money, what do we do to him? You understand that? We are going to charge him with abetment. Why? Because the criminal offense of taking someone's life by virtue of an unlawful harm was done at the instigation of him. Why? Because he gave money to him. He will then be charged with what? An abetment. Hope you're okay. You understand that? And again, the other part of the synonyms also mentions like counsels or procures. Okay, so the counsel, someone's statement, okay, and that statement proves to be a trigger. Let's take an offense of, for example, assault. Maybe someone is having an issue with somebody. Then another person tells him, are you so loose and you allow this guy to do this to him? Look, when you meet him, slap him, do this, do that. No, so you see that particular counsel, those statements, it will constitute a support. So like the example I gave, he becomes the player who delivers the pass that allows the action to go on. That will be part of what we call abetment of a crime. Okay, so the purpose is that. All right, so now it brings us to something that is very important that I want to clarify here before we move on. Is there a difference between abetment and conspiracy? We need to try and get that. What would be the difference between abetment of a crime and conspiracy? Are they the same? Because remember, if you watch the conspiracy video, we are saying that there is an agreement between two or more people for the purpose of commission of a crime, okay, and that particular agreement between those two people for the purpose of commission of the crime, we call that conspiracy. And we're also saying that an abetment is, if either by direct or indirect support, you counsel or procure something or solicit for the purpose of all that. So the question is conspiracy the same as abetment, or is abetment the same as conspiracy? Is that not a logical thing that we need to understand? Now, watch, guys, this is the thing. Let's go back to our football example. Do you know that if we take the example of the soccer game, if the players enter onto the pitch, the exact formation that has to be played, okay, how maybe a pass ought to be set up, those particular arrangements, it may not be the duty of one of the particular players. Let's say it may not be a goalkeeper, or it may not be known to some other of the players. Hope you understand that. Is that not the case? The formation, the tactics that is usually employed in making sure that the team will, for example, win a game, those tactics may not be thoroughly understood by all members on the pitch. Sometimes it even happens that the coach or his technical men do not even reveal some of these tactics to some particular people. Some of the players may not even know why they are playing certain particular roles, but they find themselves there anyway, anyhow. You understand that? All right, so the point is this. The idea of the conception, the agreement, the formation of the planning itself, like the way a coach and his technical director will sit down within their boardroom and orchestrate the plan work, how the players have to be centered. That, on the field of crime, we call that conspiracy. Okay, we call that conspiracy. So the conspiracy is what is involved in the plot. What is involved in the plot? How do we start the particular action? Who is going to play what particular role? And is there an understanding of the various roles that is going to go there? If anybody is involved in that game plan, that criminal plan, plot, we are saying that the person is guilty of conspiracy to commit that crime. So, for example, we take the case of the Frimpong, alias Igbo man's case, or like the Frimpong versus Igbo man. You know, Igbo man was charged with conspiracy, but if you watch if you read through the facts very well, when they went to the house to rob, he was not there per se. He was not in the particular premise where the robbery actually took place. So the grand scheme was that they were going to rob somebody. These were the things that they were going to do. He knew of that. He consented to that. He was part of that agreement, and hence he was guilty of conspiracy. But you see, when they got to the house, Igbo man didn't enter the house. He didn't go inside the room. When his friends were there, they were pulling out a gun and they were doing the real act of robbery. Igbo man was not part of that particular group. You understand that? So the question is that can he be charged with robbery per se? Because remember, the elements of robbery will include if you have used force to dispossess someone of a certain property, and that particular force also included the threat of assault to the victim himself or the victim's family. So at the crime scene, in the room where the action was going on, Igbo man was not there. You get it. So you realize that robbery, the real act of robbery itself, technically, he didn't take part in the robbery. But the point is, it didn't just start from the room. The agreement to go into that particular house that fateful night didn't just occur that day. There was a plot, a prior plot to have all that plan executed. And he was part of the plot. And hence we say that he was guilty of conspiracy to commit robbery. But of course, the punishment is that anybody who is liable for conspiracy would also receive the same punishment just as a substantive offense. So by virtue of that fact, he was also equally guilty of the conspiracy to commit robbery and robbery. You get it. That is how come that is it. So the essential point I'm just trying to mention here and get it is that the arrangement, the master plan, the game plan, anybody who is a participant of that, we say that the person is guilty of conspiracy. Abetment, on the other hand, may also involve conspiracy itself. But abetment can refer to somebody who may not necessarily have been part of the conspirators, but he provided support to that. You know, sometimes, like we said, some of these robbery cases, the plan might have been hatched. The only thing that we'll do is that, okay, let's take a taxi driver and we'll use this taxi driver to loot our booty. And when we get somewhere, we'll go. So the taxi driver becomes part of the arrangement. But he may not necessarily have been so much involved in the planning stage. But at the time the thing happened, he had probably some requisite grounds or reasonable grounds to believe that a particular robbery operation was taking place. But he may not have participated in the original plot to have that done. Okay? So in that case, we are saying that he could be charged with what? Abetment. Because the person's presence or whatever might have facilitated the commission of the crime. Hope you're okay. So that is basically what we mean by an abetment, okay? Whether you directly or indirectly, the person directly or indirectly by means of support, and the support will come in the form of counsel, a command, an instigation, and all that, and it aids in the commission of a crime. We say that the person is guilty of abetment of the crime. Are we okay? All right. All right, so that is it. Now, I'll turn your attention to a very important, one of the cases that we've mentioned already. You know, Azamechi versus the Republic. Now, if you watch the video that we did on conspiracy, we explained the Azamechi case. And if you have not seen it, I mean, you can just watch it. I'll just try and mention a bit of the facts again in this video because it is still central to our discussion on abetment. So like we said, they were part of a fishing gang, a fishing team in a place in the Volta region, and the plan was that they had to make some sacrifices to some gods. So there was some sort of agreement where that particular meeting, they agreed to kill one of the members of the fishing gang and use that person's body as sacrifice for those particular gods. Azamechi, who was the appellant in this instant case that we are talking about, was present in that meeting when this agreement was formed. The point is that he is guilty of the inchoate offence of what? Conspiracy. The very fact that such an evil plot, he was part of it, conspiracy kicks in. But now there's an aspect of aiding and abetting, okay? So the aiding and abetment was now when they eventually got the guy and they brought the guy to the house and the guy was being slaughtered or butchered, Azamechi was there. He was there. So the question now raises that what will happen to somebody who is present at a crime scene whilst a crime is being committed? Do you charge him with abetment? That has been the thing. He might not have been, for example, part of the plot. I'm not referring to Azamechi. Let's say the person was not part of the initial conspiracy, but he appears at a crime scene, or he is there at a crime scene, okay, and the crime is going on. So what is his role? What is his role? I mean, when you try and put it in the context of aiding and abetting. Now, the learned justice in the Azamechi case, when it came to the Court of Appeal, gave a very fantastic explanation, relying on several authorities from the common law. Let's look at what the court said in that case with respect to the aiding and abetting component. Let's see. Okay, the court speaking on the non-accidental presence at the scene of a crime. This is what the court mentioned, that non-accidental presence at the scene of a crime is not conclusive of aiding and abetting the commission of the crime. It must be proved, 1, that he intended to give encouragement, and 2, that he willfully encouraged the commission of the crime charged. Did you see what the court said in the Azamechi case, relying on an old common law principle, on decided cases from the common law? When there is a non-accidental presence there, remember you are mentioning this because of the fact that the Section 20 of the Criminal Offences Act describes or mentions abetment. And abetment in there is the issue of the presence of a person at the scene, whether by the person's presence it also constitutes an abetment. So what we need to understand as students, and also for clear this thing, is that what will be the nature or what is the exact position of the law if someone is present non-accidentally at the crime scene. All right, so this is the position of the law, as we've mentioned, that there has to be evidence that the person's presence was there to give an encouragement, and he intended to encourage the commission of that particular crime. Simple. We are done. Any further explanations that are given will just support these particular two positions. So if a crime occurs, someone can be guilty of abetment if he is there, and the purpose of his presence was to make sure that he encourages the fellow. So in Azamechi's case, the court found that his presence was to serve as an encouragement. Why? Because the fact that he was there gave the impetus for the crime to be committed. So sometimes, let's take a very common example of crimes that happen. Let's say the crime of assault. Someone approaches you and he comes with a heavily built macho man. Okay? Now this person who comes to you with the macho man, he himself is a bit skinny. And you know that if it were left to you and he alone, there is no way that he could have overpowered you. Now he meets you along the street. Maybe you guys have got some small beef. Then he begins giving you some hefty slap. Pa, pa, pa. Left and right. Now the question is that you are unable to defend yourself. Why? Because of the presence of the macho man. All right. So now the question is that the presence of the macho man, what is he doing? Don't you think that it is assisting the other person to involve himself in the assault? That is the case. So if the matter were to be taken up for investigation and criminal sanctions were supposed to be preferred, whilst the person who is delivering the slaps is guilty of assault, this macho man will be guilty of abetment. You understand that? It's abetment because his presence was there to what? To encourage the commission of the offense. To encourage the commission of the offense. So sometimes people in our local communities, they may catch a thief, or we may hear someone being called, and people are just running after him. They are just chasing him down. All right? So if you now chance on the thief in a corner, 4 people, and the thief is now begging for his life, and only one person therefore uses a stone to strike him repeatedly and he dies, the rest of the 3, do you think that the defense can avail them that, oh, they were not part of the action? The question is, do you think that if they were not 4 and it was only one person, he would have been able to overpower the thief by just launching stones and lancets and all those things against him? Obviously not. So you realize that the multiplicity of the persons and their presence there gave the particular strength that was desired for that particular commission of offense, for that action to go on. The position of the law is that an abetment can happen if you are present at a crime scene, and your presence is to make sure or there's an intention that that presence will encourage the commission of the crime, you are guilty of an abetment. Hope you're okay. All right, so in this first part of our discussion on abetment, we've been able to explain what an abetment is. Again, for emphasis, we are saying that if someone directly or indirectly, okay, either by an instigation, a counsel, a command, facilitates the commission of a criminal offense, okay, he is guilty of an abetment. He's guilty of an abetment. So, in a final example I want to give, if, let's say, let's say someone wants to go and commit a crime of maybe murder. He wants to murder somebody, and he goes to see somebody, and the person gives him a murder weapon. Maybe he gives him a knife, he gives him a gun, and that particular kind of thing. The question is that, had it not been the gun that you gave to him, do you think that the person would have been able to commit that crime? So the fact that you provided the instrument for the commission of the crime, it can also be a grounds of you being charged with abetment. So likewise, also watch out. Sometimes we hear stories and there are records of women who are raped. Now these women who are raped, usually they go to visit their partners or their boyfriends, and there are people who are probably standing somewhere trying to be on the lookout just to make sure that these things don't happen. This era of sex tapes that happen. Some ladies will be caught in a hostel and all that. Then there's somebody on the lookout who's making sure that nobody probably hears some noises or some strange sounds and comes to try and inquire. Oh, so what's going on there? Oh, some workers are just doing something there. All right, so the question is that this person who is on the lookout, watching out, whilst the other female is being assaulted in privacy, what is he guilty of? The question is that his presence is to encourage the commission of the offense, because the man can only overcome his strength and be able to channel his energies onto the woman because he knows there's someone looking out for him, if you understand that. So the presence of this lookout guy is to encourage the commission of the offense. When he's arrested, he can be charged with abetment, okay? But watch, abetment and conspiracy, depending on the circumstances, can go hand in hand. That is why when you read the sections on conspiracy, that there can be conspiracy to abet. Somebody may not be part of a crime, but after the commission of the crime, there will be a plan that this thing, we're not going to tell anybody. Okay, so they were not there, but now there's a conspiracy that we are not going to tell anybody. That in itself is an abetment. Okay, the fact that by an action we are trying to facilitate the commission of a criminal offense, that in itself is it. I hope you are fine. Okay, so that is what we mean by abetment. All right, there are several actions, several aspects to the abetment. That is, if someone is guilty of an abetment, he is liable to punishment just as the person who did the particular offense. But I will try and wrap up on our discussion by just looking at just one other aspect of the Criminal Offences Act that has got to do with the abetment. Then we'll just wrap up our discussion. Let's look at one of the subsections still on the abetment. Section 21, under the heading Abetment and the Commission of a Different Criminal Offense. Subsection 1. Where a person abets a particular criminal offense, or abets a criminal offense against or in respect of a particular person or thing, and the person abetted actually commits a different criminal offense, or commits the criminal offense against or in respect of a different person or thing, or in a manner different from that which was intended by the abetter. And, now watch, it proceeds. A, it appears that the criminal offense actually committed was not a probable consequence of the endeavor to commit, nor was substantially the same as the criminal offense which the abetter intended to abet, nor was within the scope of the abetment. The abetter is punishable for the abetment of the criminal offense which the abetter intended to abet in the manner provided by this chapter with respect to the abetment of the criminal offenses which are not actually committed. Okay, so you saw that. Yes, it can be a bit mouthful when you are reading the statute and it's mentioned abetment to abet and abet and abet and abet and abet. What is the simple implication of all these things? You can just look at it again. This is the point. The point is that if someone abets another person in a criminal offense, all right, and this person goes to commit an offense that is different from what was abetted, we are saying that sometimes there can be grounds for us to just focus on the first crime for which the person was abetted. Let me give you an example. So A is aware that B is going to commit robbery, or A abets B to go and commit robbery. So maybe there's some operation, and B says that he wants to go and rob some woman of her cash. So A gives B, his friend, a gun, a pump action gun. He should take it to go and commit the robbery. So he knows that he's just going to go and what? Just threaten the woman with a gun and probably take money from the woman, all right? So he abets robbery. Now, let's take a situation where B now goes to where the woman is, the woman's room, and in the heat of the events, he shoots the woman dead. The act is saying that, now, A, do we now charge A with an abetment of murder, or we charge him with an abetment of robbery? That's what Section 21 is trying to explain. What will be the nature of the charges that has to be preferred if what he intended to abet was not what came out? The law is that he will only be restricted to the abetment of robbery if the murder was not a probable consequence of the robbery abetment. That is it. Again, if the murder was not a probable consequence of the robbery, then he will just be confined to the abetment of the robbery. But if the murder was a probable consequence to the robbery, then he will also be charged with an abetment of what? Murder. So let's take that same example and focus on it. B wants to go and commit robbery and you give him a pump action gun. So the logical question is that, what are you expecting him to use the pump action gun to do? To defend himself. Now, if he goes into someone's room to defend himself with a pump action gun or to threaten the person with a pump action gun, what will be the most probable cause? That he will shoot the fellow. That is the likely cause. He will shoot the fellow. So once that murder arose, it should have been in a reasonable contemplation of A, that once you have given him that particular kind of dangerous murder weapon to go in there, all right, if a murder arises out of that, not only will he be charged with an abetment of robbery, but he can also be charged with another count of abetment of what? Of murder. This is it. So if someone supports someone in a conduct, in an unlawful conduct or criminal offense, and there is any other criminal offense that is a reasonable or proximal consequence of that, he will be guilty of an abetment of the first one that he intended and also the corresponding one that came out of that. Hope you're okay. Good. So that is the point that we are just trying to illustrate here. So for the students, if you have a question you are trying to look at the particular inchoate offense that should lie, I guess you should be able to establish the difference, all right? You should be able to know what an abetment is. We've mentioned the abetment. We've looked at the authorities that discusses that, okay, whether direct by indirect participation or support, either by counsel or otherwise, to aid someone in the commission of a criminal offense. We are saying that the person will be guilty of an abetment of that offense. We sought to try and explain the seemingly thin line between conspiracy and abetment. And we've mentioned that when we say conspiracy has got in its object the agreement, where there was an understanding, there was a commonality of purpose as to the ultimate objective of the crime. That one is within the realms of conspiracy. But abetment now becomes more of the state of affairs, okay, or the kind of physical support that the person may have given or aided in the commission of the crime. He may not actually might have had a full understanding of the agreement. He may still be guilty of abetment. That doesn't mean that if someone is charged with conspiracy, he cannot be charged with abetment. The two can go together. Okay, someone can be charged with abetment, and inherent in that abetment, there was a conspiracy. Another person can be charged with conspiracy. Inherent in that conspiracy, there was an abetment. That is why the provisions makes mention that you can have conspiracy to abet. So those things are there. But just to make sure that, and remember the examples that I gave you in there. Then finally, we also try to add to it that if a person abets another in the commission of crime A, and there's another crime B that should have been, or that is a spillover effect, a reasonable spillover from crime A, then the same crime B on another count will be used. This A will be charged with an abetment of that spillover crime. I think we understand that. All right. And the whole position of the law is that if you abet someone in a criminal offense, all right, the charge that we are going to slap on the fellow, you may also be liable for the same charge. I hope we've been able to discharge our explanations and our burden in explaining what the inchoate offense of abetment is. So stay tuned. In the subsequent video, we'll also discuss the other inchoate offense and attempt.